Thank you. I'm Patti. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm grateful to be sober. I'm grateful to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to thank Houston for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to participate in my recovery. I'd also like to thank her for ignoring me. I get, you get off the airplane. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm always embarrassed when I get off the airplane and somebody's standing there with a sign that says patio. You just want to well, I usually do. I walk by and then I circle around from behind. And so I was really relieved when I got off the plane there was no patio sign. And I went to luggage to baggage claim to get my luggage. And apparently the baggage handlers are having some kind of dispute or something because we waited forever for our luggage to come, which was good because now I have time to cruise around and look for the alcoholic who's here to pick me up. And I'm cruising around and there's no alcoholic looking person and there's no luggage and there's no alcoholic looking person. So the luggage finally gets down and there's pretty soon everybody's out of the baggage claim area but me. And I'm thinking something's not right. I never pay attention to things like where the convention's going to be or anything. I don't pay attention to that. And I thought I had this flash oh my God, do I have my Palm Pilot? Because I have Houston's phone number in my Palm Pilot, which is usually on the front seat of my car. And my car wasn't with me. So fortunately I had it, and so I call, and somebody else answered the phone and said, oh, Houston's on her way up to her room to get your phone number. I was like, okay, then I'll just hang up. Pretend like I didn't call. Then a few minutes later, she calls me back, and I don't know if she thought I was retarded, but she said, do you know how to take a cab? Yes. Where do I tell it to take me? So I got here. The cab driver was wonderful. I didn't understand a word he said. Still holding on to a little resentment because I think he overcharged me for the cab ride. But I get here and I come, cruising in, and I go up to the desk and I give them my name to get my room, and they go, oh, we don't have a reservation for you. I said, nice. Okay. Well, maybe it's under your first name. Okay, Patti. No, I'm sorry. We don't have no room for you. I thought, okay, they didn't pick me up at the airport. They don't have a room for me. So then David walked up and he told me Houston was in here at a meeting. I thought it would be really inappropriate to come rushing in going, where's my room? So David took me to get something to eat, which I had nothing to eat all day but a bag of peanuts on Alaska Airlines, which are not filling. I don't eat a lot, but I do need more than that. And we had a wonderful meal upstairs, and then we find Houston, and she's like, well, the reservation's under patio. Who would have thought of that? Who would have thought to say, check patio? I mean, if I had a stuttering problem, I might have. So I did get all of that done in time for the meeting last night, and you were wonderful last night. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And then this afternoon, Dave took Brian and Bob and I on a sail on his yacht out to the island. He motored out to the island and motored back, and that was great fun. And it really has been a wonderful weekend, and I really am grateful to be here. I'm certainly grateful to be sober. I was thinking while I was getting dressed, I do that so I don't have to look at myself. I'm thinking, what would this have been like drinking? What would this experience have been like if these things had happened while I was drinking alcohol? Well, first off, I'd still be at the airport waiting for my luggage. I wouldn't have found my luggage yet. I mean, how grateful I am to be sober and to have an opportunity to experience life sober, that no matter what it is, I'm sober. And as long as I'm sober, there's a chance. As long as I'm sober, there's solutions. As long as I'm sober, I know that it's whatever it is, it's going to be all right. And whatever it is, it's going to pass. And whatever it is, it's going to take care of itself. When I drink alcohol, I don't have that choice. When I drink alcohol, I don't have a chance. When I drink alcohol, the only thing I can do is order another drink. We were at dinner last night upstairs. Wine was half price. I got excited. I don't know. Did you ever have them say that to you when you were drinking? Okay, wine's half price. I'm like, oh, all right. Okay, they know the place is full of alcoholics. They're really not going to lose any money. So I guess I should tell you my story. It's rather a dull, boring story, but I'm going to tell it for Jesse. And I think the book says we tell our stories. And the reason we tell our stories is to connect one alcoholic to another. When I tell my story, I can connect with one of you. And when you share your stories, you can connect with me. And one alcoholic connecting with another alcoholic is the reason that it works. And so I want to tell my story tonight, hoping that Jesse can connect. Because if you can connect with Alcoholics Anonymous, you never have to feel the way you're feeling again. You never have to have 24 hours again. If you can connect with Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you can't connect with me, for God's sake, go to dessert. And connect with somebody at dessert. My sponsor always tells me that I should tell you my name and tell you the truth. I've told you my name. I'm not so sure I'm going to tell you the truth. And the reason for that is really clear to me. I don't know about anybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I never knew that what it used to be like was going to be important. When I was out there, I didn't know that on July 30th, 2005, I was going to have to report to you what it used to be like. When I was out there, I certainly didn't know about steps 4 and 5. I can tell you this, if I had known about steps 4 and 5, I would not have done some of the things that I did. But I didn't know that what it was going to be like was going to be important, so I didn't pay a lot of attention to my life. If I would have known how important it was going to be, I'd have taken notes. But I had no idea. And on top of that, I'm a blackout drinker. I love blackouts, by the way. I wish we could have blackouts sober. I love blackouts. There was nothing more exciting to me than leaving work on July 3rd, going back to work on July 9th, and discovering I'd been there the entire time. It makes the time between paychecks so much shorter. I love blackouts, but if you're a blackout drinker, what it used to be like gets a little sketchy. A lot of what I report to you has been reported to me by other people, and I just have to believe they're telling me the truth. I have a job. I had to get a fingerprint clearance. I fingerprint really, really well. I know just how to roll. I don't try and roll ahead of them. I don't resist them. I just roll right along with them. And while they were printing me, I didn't want to raise any red flags, but I said to this woman, I said, how far back are you going to check? And she looked at me in the eye and said, from the day you were born. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's like a fifth step, only it's in the wrong order. They're going to know about it before I do. And when the report came back, the woman called me, and I don't know, sometimes normal people, when they're going to tell us things that they think we're going to not be real happy with, they get kind of a hitch in their voice or something, and she was a little hesitant when she called me and told me my report had come back, and she said, normally these reports are 2 or 3 pages long, and I said, and she said, yours was 57 pages. Do you want to see it? Well, of course I did, and I went down and read that report, and I can tell you I know a lot more about what it used to be like having read that report than I knew before then. So, this is my perception of what it used to be like. I think it's the truth. It may or may not be. I may change next week, but it's a fun story, so I like to just tell it. I didn't have my first drink until I was 13 years old. I'm really sorry I waited that long, but I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I grew up in an alcoholic home, only I didn't know it was alcoholism. I thought we were a little strange. I had no idea it was alcoholism. I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I don't remember thinking I can't wait until the day that I can drink. And I certainly never thought I would never drink. I don't remember thinking about alcohol at all. And yet when I was 13 years old, I was on a camping trip. We were camped on the beach in Southern California. And I remember that Friday night getting into the tent, and I had a bottle of vodka in my pillowcase. And to this day, I don't know where that bottle came from. I have always believed it was the grace of God, but I've never been able to verify that. I had no idea where it came from, but I remember being excited about having it. And I asked if anybody wanted it, and they didn't. And the reason they gave me for not wanting any of it was all we had to mix with it was grape soda and root beer. And I said, well, so what? And I took off the top, and I drank half the bottle, and I looked around the tent. Nothing had gotten different. Nothing had changed. So I drank the second half of the bottle, and that was to be the end of my social drinking. Never again after that day did I ever offer anybody a drink out of my bottle. And I don't know about anybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I never got resentments until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I never had resentments out there. But one of my early resentments in Alcoholics Anonymous was I heard you talk about taking your first drink. And you talked about taking the drink, and you described how it felt in your mouth. And you talked about how it felt as it went down your throat. And you somehow felt it as it hit your stomach. And it hit your stomach and it exploded. And it went to your fingernails and your toenails, and you grew a couple inches, and your pimples dropped off, and you dropped 20 pounds and became Prince Charles, and wonderful things happened to you. And that simply wasn't the case for me. I had my first drink of alcohol, and absolutely nothing happened to me for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, the only thing that happened to me was I had to go to the bathroom. And it's my belief tonight that if I were to drink a quart of anything, in about 15 minutes, I would have to go to the bathroom. So I got out of the tent, and I shuffled through the sand to the outhouse, and I went in and went to the bathroom. And when I got done and went to get up, I realized I was absolutely and totally 100% paralyzed to the toilet seat. I could not move. I couldn't even blink. I didn't feel my heart beating, and I was overcome with a sense of fear. And, of course, the fear was that somebody else was going to have to come use that outhouse, and there I was, paralyzed to the toilet seat. Now, later in my drinking, I did discover that two people can use the same toilet at the same time if the second person is very careful about what they're doing. But I know. It's quite a visual, really, when you... But I didn't know that at 13. I did somehow intuitively know that the body was made up of energy, and I somehow figured if I could gather my energy, I would be all right. And so I've always referred to it as my first formal meditation, because I sat and I gathered my energy. And when it seemed to be all in one place, when it seemed to be sort of centrally located, I fell off the toilet, out the door, into the sand, and started crawling back to the tent. Now, of course, since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've discovered that my entire problem that night was my attitude. If my attitude would have been right, I could have had a fantasy. I was in the Marines, I was being dive bombed as I was trying to get back to safety, and if my attitude would have been right, it could have been a wonderful experience. Now, in my own defense, I always have to tell you that my pants were still down at my ankles. I had started to get sick. I couldn't quite get through it. I couldn't get around it. And I've always contended under those circumstances it's a little difficult to have a good attitude. I did somehow manage to get back to the tent. I fell in and I passed out. And when I came to in the morning, I realized nobody was in the tent with me, and I couldn't figure out where they went until my eyes cleared enough that I realized I'd been sick all night long. I'd hit the top of the tent, the side of the tent. I hadn't missed a square inch, and quite frankly, I didn't want to be in the tent either. So I got out of there, and that was my first drink of alcohol. And it was the most wonderful, incredible, marvelous, magnificent, fabulous spiritual experience I'd ever had. And it must have been because I put some amount of alcohol into my body from that day until the day I came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't always drink the kinds of things that you would classify as a beverage. I drank a lot of vanilla extract. They used to buy it by the six-pack. I understand they don't put alcohol in that anymore, but I remember the day the guy at the market called me over and he said, "Patti, I can't let you buy vanilla extract anymore." He says, "I can't believe anybody bakes as much as you do." And I got cut off from that supply. Drank a lot of mouthwash. I drank a lot of perfume. Taboo became my after-dinner drink of choice. And I'll tell you what, I still have a problem with it. If you're wearing it, I may follow you too closely and lap at your neck. It's still a tough one. It's a trigger for me. But I'm the kind of person, I come to your house and eat and drink everything in your bathroom. And I don't know this is unusual. I don't know that other people don't live this way. And when you think about it, really, how would we know? I mean, I don't know about you, but I wasn't having discussions like, well, what's your preference, the red mouthwash or the green? What do you prefer, Chantilly or Aquavelva? I wasn't having those kinds of conversations, so it doesn't occur to me I'm living any different than anybody else. I think I drink because I want to drink. I don't know that I don't have a choice. I don't know that at 13 years old I put alcohol into an alcoholic body. From that day on I had no choice. I think I drink because I want to drink. And I don't know that my life is unusual. I was a bar drinker. I was an alley drinker, a car drinker, dumpster drinker, an office drinker. A backyard drinker. I didn't really specialize. I just drank. But I love bars. And I love sleazy, nasty, disgusting bars. They're really I haven't seen one here, but I'm sure you have a couple. The really disgusting ones with the sawdust on the floor. I like them when the mirrors are cracked, so you kind of have to dip around to see yourself in there. The upholstery around the bar is ripped where people have tried to hold on as they're falling off their bar stool. And it's always a nice touch if there's a broken piece of furniture somewhere in the corner. And they used to be full of smoke. In California, you can't smoke in a bar anymore, but they used to be full of smoke. I don't understand it. I drank in bars where guys would take a piss against the wall. Apparently they can still do that, but they can't smoke. But they'd be full of smoke, and they had that wonderful used booze urine smell that I salivate still. I love that smell. But what fascinates me in retrospect is the quality of people who drank in those places. I mean, there were CEOs of really big companies. There were bank presidents, admirals in the Air Force, neurosurgeons. I mean, that's what they said they were, and I never told a lie in a bar, but I had the opportunity to go to college. I went to San Diego State. I graduated from there with a 3.8 grade point average. I share that with you because it almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic. I'm drinking on a daily basis. I'm a blackout drinker. And I graduated from college with a 3.8 grade point average. I stayed at San Diego and took classes for a master's degree. I'm the kind of person, if I'm doing something well, I want to keep doing it. Apparently I do school well, so why not? I left San Diego because I had taken all the classes San Diego State had to offer. My disease manifests itself in rationalization, justification, and denial. No matter what it is I do, I explain it to you why I'm doing it. As I'm explaining it to you, I'm hearing it. As I'm hearing it, I'm believing it. And I'm leaving San Diego because I've taken all the classes San Diego State has to offer. I don't think I'm leaving because I have another drunk driving assault charge pending. Another resentment I got in Alcoholics Anonymous, I found out here you can get arrested for a single charge of drunk driving. I never knew that. I always got arrested for drunk driving assault. And it had something to do with how I got out of the car. And here's the thing. I'm driving down the street, and the light comes on behind me. I pull over. The officer walks up. The first thing I do is slam my car door open. Now, my intent is to knock him in the private parts. But men are a little fussy about their private parts, so as the door is flying open, he jumps back to protect himself. And when he jumps back, it's really a good thing, because now he's far enough away that I can get him in focus. And I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try. And I would go out the car for him, and it'd be a really good fight. And I was a lot younger then, but it was a really good fight for a couple of minutes. But I wouldn't think about the fact that back at his car, he had a friend. And the friend had a radio, and the friend would call some more friends. And pretty soon it'd be 3 or 4 of them. One of me, it's not fair anymore. I say, Uncle, and they take me away. And the next time I'm driving down the street and the light comes on behind me, I pull over. The officer walks up. I slam my car door open, try and knock him in the private parts. He jumps back to protect himself. He gets far enough away that I can get him in focus. And I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try. And I'd go out the car for him. It'd be a really good fight for a couple of minutes, but I wouldn't remember the friend, the radio, and the friend's friend. And pretty soon it'd be 5 or 6 of them. One of me, it's not fair anymore. I say, Uncle, and they take me away. And I didn't do that once or twice. I did that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. Never remembered the friend, the radio, and the friend's friend. And that's the insanity of my disease. The insanity of my disease is I do the same thing over and over, And I think the results are going to be different. This time it's a fair fight. This time I'm going to take him. And so I don't think I'm leaving And so, and when you do that, they always attach an assault charge. They don't care that they won the fight. Drunk driving assault. Drunk driving assault. So I don't think I'm leaving because I have one more drunk driving assault charge pending. I think I'm leaving because I've taken all the classes San Diego State has to offer. I don't think I'm leaving because I have a roommate who's a little annoyed with me. And you know what I like on the raffle? That when you were talking, I don't know if it was for the raffle, you're talking about tarot card reading by the woman who did First Step Al-Anon workshop. Somehow I'm wondering if those are combined somehow, but anyway, I know we're not supposed to talk about them here, but I had a roommate who was a little annoyed with me, and I never got it. I mean, here's the thing. I'm in a bar drinking, and I don't know about you all, but the men who drank in the bars that I drank in had very little creativity. They had two basic lines. My wife doesn't understand, and I have no place to stay tonight. This was generally the end of their creativity. And so even in the worst of my alcoholism, I had a tremendous amount of compassion. So some guy would come on to me with one of those lines, and I would say, look, I'll take you home with me tonight, but I don't want to talk to you again until the bar closes. So the bar would close. Being a lady of my word, I would take this guy home with me. We would get to my house. I would send him into the bedroom on the right. I have to use the bathroom. He would go into the bedroom on the right. I would go into my bedroom on the left. And I had just sent him in with my roommate. Now, some nights this would be okay with her. Some nights she wouldn't. Other nights, within a matter of minutes, there'd be all this banging at my door, which I had, of course, locked my bedroom door. I mean, I have 7 o'clock classes. I have to get some sleep. But if it would have always been all right or never been all right, I'd have been okay. But you'd have drank if you lived with her. She was so inconsistent. So I don't think I'm leaving because she's a little annoyed with me. I really think I'm leaving because I've taken all the classes San Diego State had to offer. There's a woman in San Diego, I pray to this day, has found Al-Anon and released me. I gave this guy a ride home one night. He said something to me I've never understood. He said, I'm too drunk to drive. I have never understood that. I always drive just a little better when I'm drinking. But he was too drunk to drive, so I gave him a ride home. And we got to his house. I should have known something was wrong. When we got to the front door, he said, now you have to be very quiet. Well, I just figured he had a roommate like mine who was really inconsistent, so I didn't really pay much attention to it. He asked me to come in for a drink. I don't want to be rude, so I said okay, and I went in. And he mixed some drinks. We ended up in a bedroom. I don't know how that happened, but we ended up, my second clue that things weren't right, there were 2 twin beds, but he got them together so quickly I hardly noticed there had been 2 of them. And then we started fooling around, and I don't know, one thing led to another, and God, I used to know what it led to, but anyway, I have to go to the bathroom, which when I get to AA, I think is my only defect of character is weak kidneys. So I go to the bathroom. Now I am ready to play. And I come down the hallway. I run into the bedroom. I leap into the air. I do this Tarzan yell. I land into the bed. And this woman starts screaming so loud. And there I am, stark naked in bed with his wife. And next thing I know, he's stark naked at the door. He's trying to tell her that I'm his cousin. He hasn't seen me in 10 years. We're trying to get reacquainted. I'm just trying to get out of the bed, and this woman is looking for me to kill me. And I don't think that has anything to do with why I'm leaving San Diego. I truly believe I'm leaving rationalization, justification, and denial. I was offered a job in Chico, California, which is about as far north as you can get. I loaded everything I owned into my car. I took 2 cases of beer, 2 bottles of booze, and I headed north. I got to Santa Ana, which isn't what you want to shoot for, but I got to Santa Ana. I was out of booze and I was thirsty. I pulled off the freeway. I have a sense I can find the sleaziest bar in town without even looking for it. I walked into this place. It was full of smoke. It had that wonderful used booze urine smell. Willie Nelson was singing on the jukebox, and I knew I was home. That's as far north as I ever got. 88 miles from where I started from. Alcohol had become my mother, my father, my God, my friend, my lover, my companion, my support. And at some point it had turned, and I've always believed it was in the middle of my first drink. At some point it had turned and began to strip me of self-esteem, self-worth, dignity, decency, integrity, honesty, pride, all the things we have going for us as human beings. And it'd take long before I got to you, it had taken it all. And I didn't have a clue. I thought I drank because I wanted to drink. Alcohol controlled every area of my life. And I thought I drank because I wanted to drink. I didn't know that I didn't have a choice. I went into the profession of my choice and rose very quickly to the top, and that too almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when I got here, I told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I told you about the big oak desk. I told you about the trophies and the plaques. What I didn't tell you about, I was in the newspaper business, and I didn't tell you about the times that I would come out of a blackout in a room like this, full of people, holding an award, not knowing if I was giving it or receiving it. And so I would say thank you, and I would go sit down, and then somebody would elbow me and tell me I was presenting it to the future farmers, and I'd have to get up and start over again. And I didn't tell you that. I just told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I had a drink, and I was a journalist. If you're a journalist, you have to drink. Of course, since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I found out if you're a clerk at the grocery store, you have to drink. If you work at Texaco, you have to drink. If you work for Microsoft, you have to drink. If you're unemployed, you have to drink. I didn't know that. I thought it was the business. It was part of the business. Part of being a journalist, you had to drink. I had to go to the bars because that's where the leads happened. That's where the news was. And I did get a lot of leads in the bars. The problem was I would write the notes on those little napkins, and the glass would sweat and the ink would run. And in the morning I'd read it, and I couldn't read it. And I go, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go back there again tonight. I hope that guy's there again tonight, and I would have to go back tonight. And I did write some good stuff, but it was my alcoholism. I was driving home one night from the bar, and I don't know about you, but I had bad car karma a lot. And I was thinking, which I do all the time, did it all the time then, do it all the time now. I'm thinking, turned left onto my street, and as I turned left, the power steering went out of my car. At that moment, I slammed into a car parked on the left-hand side of the street. I turned the wheel just a little bit to get back in the center, and I slammed into a car on the right. A little bit to the left, slammed into one on the left, took one out on the right, took one out on the left, finally pulled into my driveway, and I was so relieved I'd gotten home safely. I sat there in a moment of gratitude and went in the house. I couldn't have been in the house a minute or two, and the doorbell rang. It's 20 after 2. What do they want now? People always want something. They'll never leave you alone. They're always on your back. I opened the door. It was the Orange County Sheriff. I said, do you know what time it is? He wanted me to come out on the front lawn. Well, I started telling him about my car. It apparently wasn't mechanical. He didn't care about my car. He points to all these cars that are just smashed out up and down the street. And he opens the back door of his car and wants me to get in. Now, excuse me, but I've been on the ride-along. I don't have time for the ride-along tonight. I've got to get some sleep. And he's insisting I get into his car, and I'm explaining why I can't. And he's insisting that I do, and I'm explaining why I can't. I think I got a little shove. I'm not sure, but I think I got a little push into the car. I have a reputation in Orange County as a violent drunk. You don't get out of the car the way that I get out of the car when they pull you over without getting a reputation as a violent drunk, only I don't know it. I don't know I have a reputation as a violent drunk, and I get into the car, and because I have a reputation, he shackles my ankles and he cuffs my hands behind my back, and he starts taking me for a ride. And I'm explaining to him about how the drive along, you don't do it this way. The person rides in the front seat, Next thing I know, he's on the freeway. Well, certainly on the ride-along, you do not go on the freeway. I'm explaining it to him. You got to get off the freeway at Surface Street driving on the ride-along. And he's not responding to me. He's not answering me. He's not responding. Now, in Orange County, our sheriff cars have a fence between the front seat and the back seat. I don't know what it's there for, but it's a fence. And this guy's not responding to me, and the devil flew in me. And I don't know if the devil ever flew into you, but the devil flew into me that night. And I just honked up a big one, and I just spit right on the back of his head. He didn't take it quite the way you did. Apparently it irritated him. He sped up. And he was going faster and faster and faster and faster. When the speedometer hit 100 miles an hour, he slammed on the brake. And I'm shackled and I'm cuffed and I can't break the fall, and I went face forward into that metal grate. And my glasses broke and there was blood everywhere. It was a mess. But I'll never forget that night. When they were taking my mugshot, they kept referring to me as Waffle Face because I had the... And I think I drink because I want to drink. I do not know that I don't have a choice. I do not know that alcohol is in the middle of every problem that I have in my life. I do not know that alcohol is in the middle of every success that I have in my life. I do not know that alcohol runs my entire life. I think I drink because I want to drink. I have no idea that it's a problem. How many times, remember a time I was sitting with my roommate and another person and they were talking about me as if I weren't there. And how many times does that happen where people are talking about us as if we're not there? But I remember my roommate, or this woman said to my roommate, talking about me, what's wrong with her? What is it she wants? And I remember sitting there being very excited and very quiet because I thought, thank God, now I'm going to find out. Now I'm going to find out what's wrong with me. Now I'm going to find out what it is I want. And I'm waiting for my roommate to answer, and she says, I don't know. I thought, shit, nobody knows. Nobody knows. It never occurred to me it was alcohol. I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous with what I pray God was my last drunk driving assault. By the time I got arrested the 12th time, the state of California was starting to get their underwear in a knot about barreling down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, blowing something in the breathalyzer above your grade point average. Up until then, I'd had no consequence. Well, I'd lost my driver's license, but you really don't need that to drive a car. But I'd really had no consequences. I'd pay an attorney $1,000. He'd write a letter. He'd make a phone call, whatever he'd do, and that'd kind of be the end of it. There were no consequences. And at the end, the state of California was really getting upset. I'm the kind of person, I get released from jail, I get the arrest report, I read it, I find out where I made my mistakes so I can practice that part so that next time I'll get that part right. And I always knew there'd be a next time because the cops are always looking for me. They were hassling me. I had a high-profile job. They didn't like me. They knew what I drove. They followed me. They hassled me. So I had practiced a lot. And by the end, I'm really good at field sobriety tests. I know touch your finger to your nose means this. It doesn't mean that. I know how to walk. Tonight I could stand on one foot for 45 minutes. I practice a lot. And at the last one, I was doing a great job. In fact, I mentioned to the officer I thought it was A+ work. And at the end of the test, he asked me to say the ABCs backwards. Well, the time before I had responded with, well, I can't even do that sober. Well, then I just confessed. And so on the last one, when he asked me to say the ABCs backwards, I said, okay, and I turned around. See, you think it's funny. He wasn't even amused. He took me to Orange County Jail and he put me in a cell with criminals. I mean, there were real criminals, burglars, there were prostitutes. There were women who'd been arrested for beating their husbands, which I don't think should be a crime, but in California they lock you up for it. And I knew I didn't belong there. I tried to organize a prison break. I explained the plan very carefully and very slowly to the criminals. We're going to get our coffee cups, we're going to bang them on the bars, and the marshal comes to see what's going on. I'm throwing my arm around her neck and getting her keys, and we're getting out of here. I heard something I was to hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of those criminals looked at me and she said, why don't you sit down and shut up? And I said, fine, then y'all stay, but I'm getting out. And I was going like a madwoman on those bars. A couple problems with styrofoam cups. First one is they don't make a lot of noise. The second one is the bars have a tendency to eat them up. I was released on an OR and went to court on that charge. I was 26 years old. I was drunk in court that morning until I went to court. The laundromat, the grocery store, to work. It's the only way I did anything. Stood there drunk that morning because of my past record. I was being sentenced to 10 years in prison. And in the middle of sentencing me, the expression on the judge's face changed. The tone of his voice got different. And I know he was as surprised at what he was saying as I was at what I was hearing. Because he looked at me and he said, I know this won't work for you, but I'm going to offer you one more chance. And he offered me an alternative. And part of that alternative was meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wish I could tell you I left the courtroom. I came here, I looked at the 12 steps. I knew they were the solution to problems in my life. I worked them all in the first week and skyrocketed to recovery. But that's not my story. In retrospect, I can tell you I drank for 3 more months. I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation that I had never known. I didn't drink a greater quantity. Physically, it had been impossible to drink a greater quantity of alcohol. But I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation that I had never known. And on October 4th, 1975, the day before I was to go back to court to tell the judge what it was I was doing with the alternative he gave me. On that day, I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't know what A&A was. I thought it was something like the PTA or Parents Without Partners, and a lot of days it is. But I had no idea what you people were going to do to me or for me. And that first meeting was a speaker meeting, and I can't tell you who talked that night. But I heard two things. I heard we don't drink between meetings. Well, I quickly looked around and didn't see any of you drinking in the meeting. And I thought, if you're not drinking in the meeting and you don't drink between the meetings, when do you drink? And I don't know how that impacts other newcomers, but it made me really nervous. I couldn't figure out why the judge sent me to a place where people didn't drink. I would have understood if he sent me to Sears School of Safe Driving. I did not understand why he sent me to a place where people didn't drink. And the other thing I heard was that the answers were in that book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So after the meeting, I stole the book. I mean, God knows I need to have the answers. I went home and read it. I can't tell how irritated I was. Not only could I not find the answers in that book, I couldn't even find the questions. And I thought, oh, dear God, I've stolen the wrong book, and I'm going to have to go back and get the right one. And I'm a thief. I have a record for grand theft auto. I don't really think I'm a thief. I mean, I'm in a bar drinking. The bar closes. I pick up some keys. I go out in the parking lot and find the car that they fit, and I'm driving myself home. San Diego police think this is grand theft auto. I think it's alternative transportation. I just need to get home, but I have a record as a thief. It's humiliating for a thief to have stolen the wrong book. I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous to get the answer book. That's the only reason I came back. I don't think it matters why you come back. I think what's important is that you come back. Wednesday, with 4 days of sobriety, I came to my second meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a small discussion meeting. And in that meeting, I heard, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it. And I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I could not figure out what it was you had that was so hot that I should be willing to go to any length to get it. I mean, look at the person next to you. Unless you're sleeping with them, what is it? I couldn't figure it out. And then I saw him. And I truly believe there's a him for each of us. This guy was a skinny little fellow. He was bald-headed. He wore baggy pants. He had on a thin belt. He wore tennis shoes with no shoelaces, but the holes were there where they should have been. And he nodded out during the meeting. And I quickly assessed the situation. I figured he's shooting heroin. Folks who shoot heroin nod out. And I can probably do this thing and not drink if I can shoot a little heroin. So I found out where he worked, and the next day I snuck down to his office, and I said, Dick, I have to do this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous to stay out of jail, and I don't know how to do it. And he told me if I would go to meetings and read the book and talk to other alcoholics and not drink. So I guarantee you won't get drunk. And if you don't get drunk, your life will get different. And I'm grateful he told it to me that way. He didn't tell me my life would get better. He didn't tell me my job life would get better, my finances would get better, my relationships would get better, my family life would get better, my sex life would get better. He didn't tell me any of it would get better, and I'm grateful, because none of it has. It's a little hope for the newcomer. But it's all gotten different. And as I stand here tonight, I can tell you from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, I have never had it so good. See, I don't know good from bad for me. I'm going through something I think is good for me, and it generally turns out to be bad for me. And I'm going through something I think is bad for me, and it generally turns out to be good for me. And I don't know good from bad for me, but I know different. And every area of my life is different than it was the day I came through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've gone through times in my recovery where really, really painful things have happened. I've lost people, I've lost relationships, I've lost jobs. I've had really, really painful life events. And I'm pretty dramatic, so I like to refer to it as the dark night of the soul. Unless, of course, you're going through it, then I just tell you to get over yourself. But in those times, if I don't drink and don't die and don't drink and don't die, I've gotten to the other side of it to, in retrospect, be able to look back and see that every time I've thought my life was falling apart, what was really happening is it was falling together. And it had to be exactly that way for God to move me to where He'd have me be. See, I'm the kind of person, I dig a rut. It gets comfortable, I decorate it. I get real content with what is. And God has something so much bigger planned for me. But I get so comfortable in my little rut that sometimes God has to come and kick me in the butt to get me moving. And that kick in the butt can be painful. And it gets me moving. And every time I've thought my life was falling apart, it was falling together. And I believed that old man, and I don't know why I believed him. I hadn't believed another human being in a very long time. And that old man, who, by the way, who I thought was shooting heroin, was really sober longer than I've been alive, which shows you what my judgment of people was like. And the reason that he nodded out in meetings is he had something inside that I never clue as to what it was. He had a serenity and a peace inside. He was right with himself, he was right with us, and he was right with God, and I didn't have a clue as to what that was. But I believed him. And my perception, what's right or wrong, true or false, my perception of my life growing up was that people hurt me all my life. People disappointed me and they hurt me. My parents told me that I was being raised with love anymore. Their love and I'd have died. Their love was physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. I made a conscious decision as a small child, I don't want to be hurt anymore. And I began to build a brick wall between me and you, because I just don't want to be hurt anymore. And that wall worked really well. It kept you out. What I never knew about that wall is it made me a prisoner inside. I lived behind that wall in isolation and loneliness. And alcohol didn't allow me to come out and play. Alcohol just made it okay for me to be back there. And when you live behind a brick wall, you don't believe and you don't trust. And I hadn't believed another human being in a very long time. But I believed that old man that morning. And I didn't know why then, but I know why tonight. It was the music of Alcoholics Anonymous. One alcoholic talking to another. One alcoholic talking to another goes through that brick wall. And I believed him. I had the book, so every night I'd open it and I'd read the line that says, most of us are unwilling to admit we're real alcoholics. I'd say amen and close the book. And that was reading the book. Now we go down to the Canyon Club in Laguna Beach where they have AA meetings. I'd have a cup of coffee. On the way out, I'd say hi, Jim, to the manager. He'd say hi, Patti. That was talking to another alcoholic. My court program said I had to go to 2 meetings a week. I thought that was really abusive, but I was willing to go to any length to stay out of jail. So I went to the 2 meetings a week my court program said I had to go to, and the only thing I did right is I didn't drink. And I didn't drink, and I didn't drink, and I didn't drink. And I pray God happens to everybody who's new what's happened to me. Like I said, I've been in pain in the last 29 years. Life has sometimes been incredibly painful. But I have never been in the kind of pain that I was in 8.5 months away from my last drink. The pain of not drinking and not recovering. The pain of not drinking and not recovering is the greatest pain I've ever been in. And 8.5 months away from my last drink, that pain drove me to my knees. And on my knees, I took the first step of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. Whenever I ingest alcohol, I'm damned to live the way alcohol says I'll live. Every time I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose, whether I'm fighting it because I'm drinking it or I'm fighting it because you're drinking it. Whenever I do battle with alcohol, I lose, and I'm powerless. And my life had become unmanageable. Alcohol controlled every area of my life. Where I would live, where I would work, the people I would run with, and eventually the people I would run from. And I had no choices. I was damned to live the same way day after day after day after day. And I was powerless, and my life had become unmanageable. And the book Alcoholics Anonymous says these are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. My sobriety was a gift from a very gentle and a very loving God. I was given the gift of sobriety on October 4th, 1975. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want it. Could have cared less about it. And 8.5 months later, I chose to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I took the first step of recovery and made the choice to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am required to work the steps exactly the way they're written in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It is no longer suggested. It's suggested that I make that choice. But once I make the choice, I'm required to work the steps exactly the way they're written in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm happy to report that I have done that. And I'm going to talk about the steps for a few minutes. I won't go into ice cream time, though. God knows. Brian bought me an ice cream this afternoon. I hadn't had one in years. I was like, oh, my God, it was better than sex. It was so good. Well, not quite that good. But I want to talk about the steps because for me, that's what happened. What it was like, I think we all have exactly the same story. We just acted it out a little bit differently. What happened for me are the 12 steps of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. There was no way to get from where I was on October 4th, 1975 to where I am on July 30th, 2005 without the power and the magic of the 12 steps of recovery. And this is just my experience. If you have a different experience, that's your experience. This is my experience with the steps. I'm a loner by nature. When Houston said something about me sitting here by myself, I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm a loner by nature. I love to be by myself. I do well by myself. I entertain myself. I used to have AA meetings in my house alone. You don't collect much at the Seven Tradition, but it's you don't have to share the time with anybody either. I like to fish. Well, I like to throw and reel. I'm not big on catching because then you have to touch the fish, and they are very nasty. But I like throwing and reeling. I like doing things by. You know you're a loner if you don't like AA potlucks. That's generally the indicator. But I'm a loner by nature. The book says we become disgustingly and dangerously antisocial. I didn't become that way, start out that way. I have, over the last 29 years, developed one social skill. However, I used it about 4 o'clock, so I'm fresh out of those for the day, too. But Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't change your nature. What Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me will give me a little strength. And you continue to give me the courage and strength that I need to do the things I need to do in spite of my nature. But I'm a loner by nature. I used to say I have no problem with God, but the truth is I have one problem with God. I believe we are all God's children, and I have always wanted to be an only child. That's my only problem with God. But for me, the power greater than myself in step 2, for me, was not God. You see, as a loner, if I had come to believe that God was going to restore me to sanity, I would have sat on my couch, God would have flown by, sprinkled me with sanity, taken off to wherever it is God hangs out, and that would have been the end of it. I would have been on my very own couch in Laguna, Niguel, watching reruns of Special Victims Unit, and somebody else would be here sharing with you tonight. I would have never had to do another thing. So for me, the power greater than myself was the action of steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I came to believe that through taking the action of the steps, I would be restored to right thinking. I'm an alcoholic. I'll always be an alcoholic. Every once in a while I have a thought that a drink would be nice. I have that thought. I clap. I say, thank you for your participation. I just go about whatever it is that I'm doing. I have spent my whole life trying to think my way into right living. That has never worked for me. As a result of taking the action, the steps, I have been able to act my way into right thinking. I can have a thought and not take an action on it. I've had 2 lustful thoughts since I've been standing up here tonight. I have not taken an action on either one of them yet. I can have a thought and not take an action. That's what I came to believe would happen in step 2. My thinking today is pretty much in line with the rest of the world. My thinking today is pretty much centered with the rest of the world. Step 3 for me, I ask people all the time what step they're on. They go, oh, I'm on the 3rd step. You know, every day I get up and turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Well, I'm on the 3rd step. You know, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Yeah, but by about noon, I take it back. I'm on the 3rd step. I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God, except for my sex and finances, because I don't want to be poor and celibate. And I pretty much stay away from those people because I don't think they understand the step. I've worked at the same place now for 13 years. I go the same way to work. I drive up Chapman Avenue in the city of Orange. I get to the intersection at Schaefer. I've got to make a decision, turn right, turn left, or go straight. To get to my job, I've got to turn right and make a decision to turn right, and I go straight through the intersection. Well, now I have to make a U-turn and head back toward the intersection. Now I got to make a decision, turn right, turn left, or go straight. Now to get to my job, I got to turn left. I make a decision, turn left, and I go straight through the intersection. Now I'm getting really irritated as I make another U-turn and head back toward the intersection. And I have to make a decision, turn right, turn left, or go straight. To get to my job, I got to turn right. I make a decision to turn right. I take the steering wheel and I do this. And the book talks about it. It says something to the effect that although our decision was vital, it had very little permanent effect unless immediately followed by action. The decision I make in my car has no impact on my car. What has an impact on my car is the action of turning the steering wheel. The decision is the easy part. How do you want to live? Chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic, or do you want to believe the people in AA are telling you the truth? Powerless, you want to plug into the powerful, into the power. Incomprehensible demoralization, hope. It's not a tough decision. I think I'll go with hope. But the decision has no impact unless I do something else. And the first something else for me was an inventory. And I did my inventory the way the book says to do it. I made the columns, who I resented. Everybody who breathes air that I thought should have been mine got on that list. What they did to me, well, I wanted to tell you all my life what they did to me. I was really having fun doing that part. How it affected me. Well, it affected my self-esteem, my security, my self-worth. Well, no wonder I drank. If all these people did all these things to you, you'd have drank too. I was really having a good time. But then in my zealousness, I accidentally turned the page of the big book. And after it shows the diagram, hidden in the copy, it says, referring to our list again, we put out of our minds the wrongs others had done, and we looked at our part. Well, that'll take all the fun out of it. But I did that. I did that with my resentments, my fears, and my relationships. And for the first time, I saw who Patti really was. See, my whole life had been a show. I'd spent my whole life putting on a show. My whole life was a show, and I had come to believe the show. By the time I got to you, I had no idea who Patti really was. I had no idea. I believed the show. I put my 4-step in the trunk of my car because I didn't want anybody to find it. I have a son as a direct result of my alcoholism. I never wanted to be a mother. I found out that is not adequate birth control, but he didn't read yet, but I didn't want anybody finding my 5th step, so I put my 4th step in the trunk of my car, and I just drove around with a continual sense of impending doom. And the fear was I'd be rear-ended on the freeway, my trunk would fly open, my 4th step would be everywhere. But rather than do a 5th step, I just drove that way for a long time. And then one night I was in Los Angeles visiting this woman, and we were talking, and as we were talking, I realized I was doing a 5th step, and I thought if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And I went to my car, and I got my 4th step, and did a 5th step with her. And when I did finish my 5th step, that big brick wall I had built between me and you, one brick came out of that wall. One crummy brick. But every time I've shared with another alcoholic, another brick has come out of that wall. And tonight I have no brick wall between me and you. I have a little styrofoam thing I throw up sometimes. Sometimes I get afraid. Sometimes I feel insecure. Sometimes I have self-doubt, and you're not there. And I throw a little styrofoam wall up, and then one of you comes and blows it down and takes my hand and walks with me through it. Every time you have walked with me, you have opened new doors and added to my life. When I try to do it by myself, I shortchange myself. But when you take my hand and walk with me through the fear and the insecurity or the self-doubt, you open new doors and you add to my life. Step 6, I went home and did step 6 and 7 by mistake. I didn't mean to recover this quickly, but I just by coincidence opened the book to a part where it talks about step 6 and 7. And you don't have to be a journalism major to know the book Alcoholics Anonymous is very poorly written. Any newcomer will tell you this. But the part about step 6 is kind of poetic. And I kind of got lulled into reading it. And when I became aware of what I was reading, I was in the middle of the 7-step prayer. And when I became aware of what I was reading, that prayer took the longest journey anything has ever taken for me, the journey from my head to my heart. And I finished reading that prayer, and exactly what it says in the book happened to me. I walked through the archway to freedom. I walked away from the person I've been all of my life to start to become the person God intended for me to be. And the best I've ever described myself, when I came here, I was an animal with latent human tendencies. That's what walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because you've been willing to share your experience, strength, and hope with me. I've become very kind, very loving, very caring, very nurturing. Of course, now they're telling me it's codependency and I have to recover from it. But I love the person who I am. I'm tempted to write a book, Women Who Love Themselves Too Much. Steps 8 and 9 for me are conventional ways of getting rid of conventional guilt. I felt guilty because I was guilty. I did a lot of things to a lot of people for one more drink. If it came between you and a drink, I took a drink. A job and a drink, I took a drink. A car and a drink, anything and a drink, I took a drink. I did a lot of things to a lot of people for one more drink. And it wasn't about just saying sorry. I said sorry all my life. Sorry, 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 and then I'd do it again and get caught. Sorry, 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 and then I'd do it again and get caught. It wasn't about sorry. It was about living my life differently. And I don't know how to do it. So I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and the men and women in Alcoholics Anonymous, you would share with me how you went to work for 8 hours and you didn't take a drink. And I would take your experience out into the world and live it, and it became my experience. And you talked about how you were a daughter and you didn't take a drink. And I would take your experience out into the world and I'd live it and become my experience. And I started to make amends to the people in my life by becoming a different kind of person, because the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous shared their experiences with me and allowed me to take their experiences out into the world and live them, and they became my experience. And I became willing to make amends to everybody in my life except my father. My father's a drunk. He's a Jekyll and a Hyde drunk. He's an angry drunk, and he's a violent drunk. And I was the target of his abuse, and he was very, very violent, and I hate my father. And I refused to make amends to him. And my sponsor said, that's fine. She said, as long as you're willing to pay the price. And I'm willing to I don't want to go to the father-daughter banquet. I'm fine paying the price. Thank you. And I'm not making amends to him. I started making amends to the other people in my life, and I started living differently, and I started paying what I owed, and I started being a good daughter, and I started to my mother and my good sister, and I became a good mother, and I started doing the things that men and women do. And then I noticed, now I know this had been going on, but I had never noticed, selfish, self-centered. I had never noticed that you all were friends. People would gather together after the meeting in little groups and talk about going to coffee. I'd hear people talking about going to dinner. They were going to movies. It was suddenly thought, hey, I need to have some friends. So I decide that I'm going to start getting friends. So this is how I get friends. I sit next to you in a meeting. The next meeting, I sit next to you again. The third meeting, I'm sitting next to you. You are now my friend. Now I have a friend, and I'm very excited. But then maybe you crack your gum, which really irritates me. Now you can't be my friend anymore because you've irritated me, so then I have to sit next to somebody else. And the second meeting and the third meeting, now I've got a new friend. I'm very excited I have a friend. But then my friend will cross their leg during a meeting and accidentally kick me. Now I'm annoyed because you've kicked me. You can't be my friend, so now I have to have a new friend. And I sit next to somebody else for 2 or 3 meetings. AA is huge in Southern California. I was doing this for a long, long time. And then I'm having a conversation with my sponsor, and I accidentally mentioned that people in AA don't know how to be friends. And she reminded me that I refused to make amends to my father. And I said, and? She said, Patti, hate doesn't know that it's directed at one person. Hate will spill out into every other relationship in your life. I became willing to make amends to my father, not because I wanted to go to the father-daughter banquet. I became willing to make amends to my father because I wanted to have relationships with you. And I made amends to my father, and I continued to live continued to make that amend to my father. And as the amend to my father grew, I had more and more people in my life who became my friends. And I have some of the best friendships in the world today as a result of making amends. Nobody cares what your motive is. What we care about is what your action was. It didn't matter what my motive for making that amend was. What mattered was the action of making the amend. And I have some really great friends. My very dearest friend. And it talks in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It talks about we are people who normally would not mix. My very dearest friend in the whole world ever is, I call her the princess. And she refers to me as the medicine woman. We are definitely people who normally would not mix. I think self-supporting through your own contributions is going to work. She thinks it's alimony. We would go to a convention or go to Palm Springs or do something for a weekend. I take one backpack over my shoulder. She's got 7 or 8 Foot Lockers because she has to have lots of costume changes. We are people who normally would not mix, but what we have in common is a tremendous passion for Alcoholics Anonymous. What we have in common is a tremendous passion for the 12 Steps. What we have in common is an incredible passion for service in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the common bond. And the princess and I were best friends for 18 years. And then one day she went to a doctor because she had the flu, and the doctor diagnosed liver cancer, and 3 weeks later she was dead. And it's been a few years, and I still have a very, very hard time with it. I wanted to build that brick wall back up so badly that day that I had the great pleasure of being with her when she took her last breath. I had the great pleasure of spending the last 20 minutes of her life with her. But when she took her last breath, I so badly wanted to build that wall back between me and you, because I'm just that little kid that doesn't want to be hurt anymore. And that was one of the most incredibly, it was so painful at a level that I had never experienced. I just didn't know what to do. And half an hour later, I was in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because my feet know what to do. I came to you. And I had a very, very hard time for a very, very long time. And I just kept doing the next right action, whatever it was, the next right action, whatever it was. And an Al-Anon saved my life. And an Al-Anon told me, she said, Patti, she said, you're in this much pain because of the depth that you are able to love as a direct result of the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Would you be willing to give up a single day of the last 18 years if you didn't have to experience this pain? And I was not willing to have given up a single day. And so I embraced the pain and I walked with it. And I'll tell you what, there's not a day yet that goes by that I don't think I've got to call the princess and tell her about that. I've got to call the princess and tell her about that. As a direct result of making amends to my father, I have friendships at that level. And I'm a loner, and I'm an isolator, and I don't like people. And I have people in my life at a level that I never, ever would have planned for myself, and left to my own devices, I will continue to shortchange myself. God has a plan for me bigger than anything I could ever plan for myself. Steps 10, 11, and 12 for me are the recovery steps. Here are the steps that give me the privilege of continuing to be in the middle of you. 10 says the process is powerful. Keep using it. Keep talking about it, writing about it. Ask God to remove the defect, make amends if necessary, and then turn your attention to somebody you can help. What is it I can do for you? How can I be of service? It seems to me when I'm paying attention to you, God can come in and take care of my stuff. When I'm focused on my stuff, God can't do a thing with it. What is it I can do for you? How can I be of service? Step 11, my prayer in the morning is very simply, Thy will be done. I'm so naive, I believe the rest of the day is God's business. My job is to not drink, show up, and live life to the fullest. My prayer at night is a little scary, or offer it to anybody who'd like to use it. My prayer at night is, Dear God, please have people treat me tomorrow exactly the way I treated people today. And when I know I'm going to say that prayer tonight, it will hold me in good stead. I don't live my life so much out of virtue as I do I know I'm going to say that prayer tonight. Dear God, please have people treat me tomorrow exactly the way I treated people today. I still count, but I don't announce the number of items in the guy in the 10-item or less line at the grocery store. And step 12 is the greatest gift you've ever given me, an opportunity to take a little of my past and give it to another alcoholic. To look into the eyes of another alcoholic and say, honey, you don't have to live that way anymore. Take my hand, come with me, sit in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you don't have to live that way anymore. I'm going to tell you one more story, and then I think I'm out of time. The biggest lie, one of the biggest lies that we tell as alcoholics is I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting anybody, I'm only hurting myself. It's one of the biggest lies that we tell. If you're a parent, or if you have a parent, it's the biggest lie we ever tell. My son was 11 months old when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I brought him with me. I didn't know what else to do with him. I didn't know how to be a parent. I'd bring him with me, and one of you would take him, and you'd hold him during the meeting. At the end of the meeting, you'd give him back to me. And the next meeting, you'd take him. And everything my son knows, he learned from you. He learned how to be kind and loving and generous and caring. Of course, you also taught him how to con and manipulate, and I've never been thrilled with that, but you have to take the good with the bad. But he grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. If sitting in a meeting were enough, my son would never have had a problem. If just sitting in a meeting were enough, because he's sat in more meetings than most of the women I sponsor, he was raised here with you. And I've since heard his story, but he made a decision right before he was 18 years old. He came in my house one night, and I just looked at him, and his eyelids were down at his knees, and God did for me what I could not do for myself. It's my only child, and I love him more than life. And I would never have said these words to him. But out of my mouth came these words, Patrick, are you loaded? And he said, no, Mom, I'm just tired. And he had heard me say it over and over and over. And he didn't even bat an eye. No, Mom, I'm just tired. I said, Patrick, you need to make a choice. You can either live with me or you can smoke marijuana, but you can't do both. And he went into his room and he packed a bag and he came out and he had made a choice and he walked out the door. And my heart broke. For a mother to have their child, my heart broke. He made a choice. Intellectually, I understand it. But to have it happen, it was very, very painful. And I sat on my couch wondering if I should kill myself or drink. I couldn't figure out which one to do, so I just sat on my couch. And my son took a journey that we take. He took a journey that men and women should not have to take. He went places that men and women should not have to go. And he did things that men and women should not have to do. And then he started calling me for money, and he was in San Francisco, he wanted me to wire him money. He'd had an accident, and he needed to go to the emergency room, and I said, look, I'll send a check. He said, no, I need it right now, you have to wire it. I said, I don't know how to do that. He explained to me how to do it. And I did it, and I did it again, and I did it again. I got a little MoneyGram saver card so I could save money on what it cost me to send it. I was in the ring with his disease. I went to different MoneyGram stores. I don't want the 17-year-old pimply kid to know I'm sending money again. So I go to this one day, and this one another day, and that one another day, and he's a medical student in this one. He's got a wife and 6 kids in that one. I got stories going, and I'm telling lies, and I'm sending him money, but the thing that I did right is I came to you and I told you the truth. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I told the truth. I'm 24, 25 years sober, and I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous telling the truth. And I don't care if I look bad. I would rather look bad than look drunk. And I came here and told you the truth. And I got judged by the men and women in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got judged as an enabler. I got all kinds of judgments. And I kept coming and telling you the truth. And I was in the ring with his disease, and I was getting the poop kicked out of me. I went to Al-Anon. My Al-Anon sponsor said to me, because it was always an accident, it was an injury. And she said to me, Patti, until you're ready to get the phone call that says we found your son and he bled out, you're probably going to continue to send the money. Just keep going to Alcoholics Anonymous and tell them the truth. And one day my son moved back to Orange County, and he called me, and he was in a motel room, and he said, Mom, I need help. And God one more time did for me what I can't do for myself. I said, Patrick, if I come, I'm going to kill you. I can't help you anymore. You stay where you are. And I called a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I told him that my son needed help. And thank God he understood the traditions. Whenever the hand reaches out, I am responsible. Thank God he understood. He didn't say, tell the kid to call me. He said, where is he? And I gave him the address, and he picked up a newcomer, and they went and got my son on October 23rd, 2002. They took my son to detox, and they brought him to the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a day at a time, if he doesn't drink and he doesn't use, he'll have 3 years of sobriety in October, and he's in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where you have to be, Jesse. You have to be in the middle. You can't be on the fringes. You got to be in the middle. And watch the men and women. They didn't tell my son what to do. They showed him what to do, exactly the way you did with me. Nobody told me what to do. You showed me what to do, and you are showing my son what to do, and you're keeping him in the middle. And if you stay in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you watch the men and women around you, and you listen to their experiences, and you take their experiences out into the world and live them and let them become your experiences, next year at this roundup, you'll be celebrating a year's sobriety. And 29 years from now, you'll be celebrating 29 years. And you'll be standing there thinking, how did this happen? I only came for 15 months. How did this happen? This happened through the grace of God and the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous, and one alcoholic talking to another. One alcoholic talking to another. I'm going to end with the story of the man that goes to see St. Peter, and he asks St. Peter to show him heaven and hell. St. Peter takes him to a room, and it says hell on the door, but when they open the door, it's a banquet. It's tables and tables and tables of food, as much food as you could ever imagine, any kind of food you'd ever want. And in that room, all those people sitting amongst all that food, they're starving, they're hungry, and they're dying. And the reason that they're hungry is they have long wooden spoons tied to their hands, and the spoons are just a little bit too long, and they can't quite get the food to their mouth. So they're sitting amongst plenty, and they're starving. And that's how I was before I came to you. I was out there amongst plenty, and I was starving. They took him to a room marked heaven, and that room was the same thing, tables and tables and tables of food, as much food as you could ever imagine. Those people had that spoon tied to their hand, too, and they couldn't quite get the food to their mouth, but people in that room were full and happy, and they were content. And the reason is that one man was taking a spoonful of food, and he was feeding the person across from him. And he was feeding the person next to him, and she was feeding somebody else. And that's how Alcoholics Anonymous works for me. I don't have my own answers. I have to come here, and I have to let you feed me. And if I'm lucky, every once in a while I get to give a spoonful of this thing to another alcoholic. And you don't have to have 10 years or 5 years or 1 year. If you have one day, you have something to feed to the man or woman sitting next to you. If you have one day, you have courage to give to the person on your right and strength to give to the person on your left. When I was 4 days sober, an old man told me if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get drunk. If I didn't get drunk, my life would get different. And I end with this because it's been my experience, and I pray, God, it's your experience. And we already heard it tonight when Sarah read chapter 5. It's a line in chapter 5 that says, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Thank you.